This is Nellie Deutsch. It's not Dr. Ramesh. I'm going to introduce our speaker, and then I'm going to go over to my other computer as me. All right, so we're going to get started. If you could just add in the chat box where you're from and what you're doing, what time it is, what the weather is like, anything you'd like to add to give us a sense of your presence, even though we don't see you, we can't touch you. This is virtually online. Uh, Please feel free to use the chat box for anything. You can't disturb anyone because we don't hear you. And it makes it more exciting, I think, to use the chat box. I can't live without it. All right, so a little bit about our speaker, Dr. Ramesh Sharma. I have known Dr. Sharma for a number of years. Time flies, especially internet years. So it's been at least 7, maybe 8 years. I'm not quite sure. I know where we met, and I'm going to be introducing that as well. Dr. Ramesh Sharma has just completed a wonderful open education resource MOOC with almost 1,500. You can see the numbers here of participants on WizIQ. It was very successful, and I think I'm looking forward to the next one because open education resources are very, very important to us as educators and to our students. A little bit more about my friendship, I would say, and work with Dr. Sharma is on Wiki Educator, still is on Wiki Educator. I started with Wiki Educator in 2007. I think Dr. Ramesh was right there as well. We gave some courses together, and also Dr. Ramesh gave all these courses. These are all free online courses on Wiki Educator. They're workshops, learning for content on how to create and use open education resources. We're also involved in the User Page Expo Award, where the winner of the best wiki page um, gets awarded with a monthly recognition. I think that's really, really exciting. It's been going on since 2008, I believe. Dr. Ramesh is from India. Sorry the way this PowerPoint turned out. It didn't look like this on my system. He has a PhD in education in the area of educational technology and a Master of Computer Application, MCA. He works as Regional Director of Indira Gandhi National Open, of course, Open University. If you'd like to know about Open, I think Dr. Ramesh is probably one of the leading experts in the world. From 2009 to 11, he was the Director of Institute of Distance Education, Continuing Education, University of Ghana, Ghana in South America, the only country, by the way, where English is the first language. And I think that's where we met Dr. Sharma when you were still there and maybe going back and forth. He's also involved, and you can read more about the UNCTAD and the United Nations bodies. Dr. Ramesh volunteers a lot of his time. I sometimes wonder where he has time. In different organizations, you can see some of them. And of course, open education and e-learning. And he's on the advisory board, editorial advisory board of many journals, peer review, and other journals. Again, this is very time consuming. People don't think that it's only your name up there, but it's a lot of work. I know because reviewing papers takes time. And that's just the beginning. We're going to hear more, so I'm going to pass on the mic and get the PowerPoint presentation. By the way, if you look at the chat, you'll notice that there's the link to the PowerPoint presentation. You're invited to download it and get the links because they don't come out active on the whiteboard, but if you open up the PowerPoint presentation, everything, all the links are very active. In addition, you're invited to copy and the chat at the end and paste it anywhere you wish. This is part of Moodle MOOC 2. And these are the presentations. You'll be able to get a certificate if you reflect on 10 of the out of the 22 presentations. So let me pass on the mic to our gracious speaker, Dr. Sharma. And I'm going to go hop over to my other computer so I can come in as me. It's kind of confusing, but online we can do so much, including change our identities. Okay, so I'm passing on the mic. This shouldn't take more than a few seconds. Of course, we all have different connections, so it depends on that. Out of the body experience. Okay, yeah. Okay, so I don't think it went through for some reason. So I'm going to try again. Let's try with we'll do this one step at a time. There we go. It worked. Hello.
Okay.
Good evening.
Hello, everyone.
And welcome.
I hope you can hear me. Just indicate in the chat box. Hello, Tom. Okay. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Helena. Thank you so much. In fact, during the starting of this session, I was not having any audio or video, so I was not aware. Although I could see the slide transition on. Hello, Michelle. And at the outset, let me thank Dr. Nelly for giving me this opportunity to present on Moodle MOOC 2. And I have, like you all, I have also registered for Moodle MOOC 3 also, which is going to be held next year. So it will be. Thank you, Alina. Thank you so much. Namaste to you as well. So since the introductions have already been done by Dr. Nelly, I think I can begin with my presentation. And at the outset, let me begin with a childhood riddle, which my good friend Dr. Sanjay Mishra, he is the director for Commonwealth Educational Media Center for Asia. And he, during one of his presentation, he asked this question that what is that does not get reduced after sharing with someone else? Oh, very good, Thomas. Very good. Yes, knowledge. Knowledge is that which is what we can, yes, love also. Yes, I agree. Yes, I also agree with that. So next time I'm going to add that point in my in my list of answers. But for the sake of my this theme today, I'll go ahead with knowledge. And there are I consider that there are three important stages for knowledge, as you will all agree with me. The first is the creation of knowledge, and then the transmission, and then the advancement of knowledge. So creation of knowledge, how the knowledge was created. Whatever we know as of date, currently what we know has been possible due to these three processes involved with knowledge. When the information turns from information to the knowledge, the first it has to be created. Something was created by someone, sometimes, somewhere. That's why we know that we know that what was created and what has been passed on from generation to generation to us. And there have been we think there are thinkers, there are philosophers, there are scientists. As a common person, whatever we think, either we think for to solve some problem. It can be of any type, be it personal problem, social problem, or whatever it is. So the first step is to uh, do we retain distant knowledge more than current? Uh, it depends. So first, the creation comes first, and then it has to be transmitted. I once read on the website of UNESCO that there are certain languages, I think around 8,000 languages, which are going to be ceased now because the speakers of those languages, they are no more with us. And the people, they are not practicing those languages. Then there are certain other things like I remember there is a bird called as dodo. It is extinct now, killed by us. So, or maybe finished due to climatical or whatever the regions can be. But it has to be transmitted. Whatever we know as on date, we know because it was transmitted. Transmitted how? Maybe there are in the if you see the initial beginning, the knowledge was transmitted orally from one person to another person, from teacher to the students, from one generation to another generation, and like that. And then from there, then it came. There are certain issues with the verbal transmission. We tend to forget, and the message it can get misinterpreted on the way while we transmit it from one source to another source. Then we thought that okay, we can keep it. A lot of older people remember older memories and forget what they did last week. Tom, not only that, I think even now sometimes I also forget that what I ate yesterday. And sometimes if you are watching television and something is going on and it becomes difficult, say if you are listening to some songs, that what was the first song when you are in the fifth song. So sometimes, we have short-term memory and long-term memory. So that happens. And then we graduated to the writing communication stage, in which initially the knowledge was stored on papyrus, and then stones. Stones, they are very difficult to move from one place to another place, although there have been many messages written by, even in Indian history we read about so many good messages by the kings for their people to guide them, to provide them knowledge. But it difficult. And when the paper was invented and the printing press came into being, then the life became quite easy. But even the paper, it had certain life stages. And then the introduction of electronic media, in terms of, you can still remember in the older days when we used to have those audio tapes and video tapes with those a long magnetic strip to it, and the searching was sequential in nature. And then we had nowadays, like it is USB storing a vast amount of knowledge into it, so the size has become smaller and the capacity has become bigger. And not only that, I remember two wonderful examples of the excellence of human engineering. These are the spacecrafts like Pioneer 10 and Voyager 1. And I think Pioneer 10 and Voyager 1, they became the first man-made, I can call it a machine, living over a solar system. And it's many billion years away from Earth, but still we keep receiving faint signals from some of the space and gone. They were launched for the study of either Jupiter or Mars or Saturn and something like that. What is good about it, or what is unique about it? Say for example, on Pioneer 10, I still remember that it contains certain information, and like it has a symbol of hydrogen, and the location of the Earth from where it has come, and a structure of male and female body, and some voices on Voyager 1 of about selected, like that. So transmitting knowledge from one place to another place. And then we need to advance the knowledge also, to create new knowledge. so that the things they progress. This transmission or the communication can be of various types. Say, for example, if we see it in terms of online communications, it can be one to one, like with the help of email, we communicate from one person to one person, or instant messaging. Now, then another category can be one to many, like we have certain blog entries or emails. I can send email to many people, and then many to many type of communication in the form of like we transmit, we share knowledge through wikis, listservs, or online forums. And then another type is many to one. For example, we have aggregators and tagging, voting, or Foxonomy, in which the tweet about the Moodle MOOC or different kind of topics. The aggregators, they collate all the information at one place and it is made available. Are myths and legends the transmission of oldest human knowledge? Uh, Tom, I think since whatever I make it in this way that the oldest human knowledge is the base for what we know currently. So definitely, there may be myths into it, there may be legends, but there may be two things into that also. Uh, Now, this is the a learning pyramid. Let's come to teaching now. Okay, uh, teaching. Let's focus on teaching. You can see from this graphic. But first of all, I would like to have your opinion on what do we or what do you understand or how would you define teaching? I think we can have some of your inputs in the chat box. If I ask you how would you express what is teaching? Yes, Nelly, we are very soon going to celebrate the festival of lights, Diwali, and the people they are cracking fireworks. So uh, you know we have so many now. It is the festival season. Hello, Hemlata ji. Perhaps you can also explain that we are nearing Diwali, the festival of lights, when everything will be lit brightly and so kindly bear with me. I think it will stop very soon. And although I have my windows closed, but still the noise is coming from there. Teaching is a social process, and defining it may be a little difficult because it may be influenced by political and social background. So, but in general terms, what we consider teaching as a process by which we impart knowledge or skill to someone. Now, how does it help a teacher as a teacher to us or to someone who is teaching something? And like in our presentation, did I skip something? Okay. See, the best way to learn is to teach. Frank Oppenheimer said that. Now, there are two ways of teaching methods. One is the passive teaching methods, like you have heard about lecturing, reading, audio-visual presentation. Simply, we present something and demonstrating. In addition to that, there are certain methods which we call them as participatory, like group discussion, practice, and teaching others. And you can see that this pyramid, it is showing that the most preferred is the teaching others. And that is also the base of my presentation, that if we want to learn something, it's always the best way to learn is to teach it. Even Richard Branson also says that the best way of learning about anything is by doing it. It is a different point of view than that one of learning styles. Very interesting, dynamic. Okay, thank you, Ortega. Now, since as you just now said that, and teachers know that So why do teachers focus on instruction and do not allow students to teach? Okay. So different roads sometimes lead to the same castle. Means that there may be different approaches and a personalized approaches, but the end target would be the same. That how to enhance learning uh, among some among our students. So how does it help if we are means the best way to learn is to teach something that we can when we teach something means that we need a good grasp of the content to pass on to others. Unless we have the good grasp on it, it will be difficult for us to communicate what we know to the others. So that is one of the factors into it. And then we need to present content in different ways so that we can see it from different angles. And that's why all all roads lead to Rome. Very good. Perhaps this road is going to the Rome, and that is another a good thing to develop divergent thinking among our students. That we need to allow our students to develop those skills and those capabilities in which they can see the things differently, and it turns the short-term memory, like just a few minutes ago Tom was saying that we sometimes we forget that what happened just a few moments before. So it helps us to turn the short-term memory into the long-term knowledge, and then it helps us to verbalize this. To teach is to learn twice. Well said, Alina. That's good. Now, this is an interesting cone of learning by Edgar Dale, and he was an educator. And in 1969, he evaluated different ways of learning. And here you can see that he has divided this whole of the cone into two types: the passive learning and active learning. And then a percentage has been given that people generally remember on like 10% of what they read, 20% of what they hear, and 30% of what they see, something like that. And the figure says that 90% of what they do. And but based upon that, the people are able to means what are the learning outcomes about it, that when they try to say means when they say something, when they write something, when they do something, the learning is active learning, and they are able to analyze the things, define the things, create some knowledge, and evaluate something. So that way. But there is an interesting thing which I found about this cone of learning, and particularly on Wiki Educator. In fact, on Wiki Educator, it has been mentioned that it was cone of experience. And Edgar Dale, he wanted to create an intuitive model of concreteness of various kinds of audio visual media. In fact, it was not his intention to project it in such a way that it becomes a cone of learning. Yes, Larry, I think you can check. Perhaps I could not, while preparing it, the link on Wiki Educator, but on Wiki Educator, I found that. In fact, it is written there that his cone of experience has been misinterpreted, and Edgar Dale, he did not put these percentages in his cone, and there was no scientific base. Also, he wanted to create it in some way, that how the various kind of media can be concrete on audio and video on that parameter. But anyhow, it's a good graphic, and yeah, normally we believe that if I hear something, I can forget it. So like that. This is an interesting, although a little old, but I found it very relevant even for my presentation and for today's societies. It is Kellogg Commission, which was set up in 1999, and they brought out this report that returning to our roots, a learning society. Uh, this in their society, I'd like to point out this thing that uh, in their executive summary, we write as 24 presidents and chancellors of public state universities and land grant institutions to make the case that our institutions must play an essential role in making lifelong learning a reality in United States. Here I can say that it is applicable to globally for all the institutions. That lifelong learning is the need of the hour. And the concept of lifelong learning has been talked of before, but for the first time, we now have the technical means to make it a reality. And that is very important here, that now they say, particularly in 1999 when that report was written, that we have the technological means to make it a reality. We are convinced that public research universities must be leaders in a new era of not simply increased demand for education, but rather of a change so fundamental and far reaching that the establishment of a true learning society lies within our grasp. That is main. So, what are the important things coming out of this Kellogg Commission report? Three things they stand apart. The first is that they wanted to make lifelong learning as the core of their mission. And then they say that we need to create new kinds of learning environments. And then there has to be some sort of public support of lifelong learning. And they identified at that time that it is possible because now we have the technological means with us. Based on that, now how that learning can be oriented. Paul Goodman, in his book Technology Enhanced Learning Opportunities for Change, he has identified certain principles. Like, first, he says that it depends wholly on what the student does, only indirectly on what the teacher or the universities does. Means more it has to be the learner oriented, student specific center. Then the another factor which is there, analysis of student behaviors begin with the analysis of the learning task. We should first analyze the learning task, and on the basis of that, then from the entry behavior we must go to the terminal behavior. How, at what level we start, and what would be the end of that stage. And that is a fundamental rule, that the technology, if it is there, it doesn't necessarily that we have to use. We must use it only when we see that how it will enhance the knowledge, the learning in the students, and as a teacher it will make our job more effective and better. Then we must use it. Just it should not be used for the sake of using it, bringing something in it. It sometimes, as we know, that it can backfire. Now, this is another interesting thing about academic star. Uh, Greg Light, Roy Cox, and Susanna Calkins, in their book on learning and teaching in higher education, they identified that we are having a short of academic star, which is due to some factors, due to globalization, the forces of commercial exchange, and increasing calls for accountability and excellence due to the pressure of the governments, due to the pressure of the parents. They want to have accountability in the teaching learning system, and even the student pressure also. So certain sort of we can identify an academic storm, but still there is a burden remains on the educational system, on the teachers as well, on the system as a whole, on the administration. And what are the various factors, like there is an aspect of faculty student ratio, and particularly this point is highly uh, important, I can say, in our region, Asian or developing world, where the teacher and the student ratio is very big. There is a lack of large number of teachers, And the teachers, the single teacher, there are single teacher schools in which a teacher they have to teach a large number of students. Then teacher time, assessment responsibility to provide feedback, to engage actively into the research and scholarship. There are certain uh, type of you can say things to be done. No, it has brought certain changes in the relationship of society with the knowledge and the higher education. How, what are various factors, various societal forces? They are affecting the higher education scenario. And then on the basis of the kind of knowledge which is prevalent at that time, whatever the level of knowledge, it is bringing out a certain change in it. I think I can explain it in this way that if we see in a matrix of time and space, in which the time and space, if they are same or different, then if it is at the same time at the same space, it becomes the classroom learning. And when if it is same space and different timings, it can lead to computer based systems where the knowledge is shared with the students in that way. uh, at the same time, if it is different spaces, then it becomes an example of distributed learning. And with the a different time and a different space, it becomes an example of asynchronous learning. So these things, they are bringing out certain changes in the relationship. Now there are certain these things, they have brought out certain transformations in the classroom, and some of them are, it's not the complete or exhaustive list, but nowadays the students and the teachers, they are using video recording in the classrooms, podcasts, wiki, blog, microblogging, social networking, cell phones, we call them BYOD, bring your own device, in the classroom, texting, sorry, it's a typo there, it is not texting, it is texting, instant messaging, tablets, another, sorry, yeah, my mistake, and live streaming. So the wikis, there can be two kind of wikis, in which either the teacher will create wiki and invite all the students to work collaboratively on that, or the student created wikis, in which individual students, they create their wiki and then ask the peer to contribute or to add to the uh, knowledge or the content created by them on their wikis. Then there are many other more such kind of transformations which are happening in the classroom, which are in a way changing the learning scenario among the students. Uh, we all know about Arthur C. Clarke, the famous sci-fi author, writer, and in 1973 he gave three laws of prediction, and I find them very suitable, so I included them in my presentation. He says that when a distinguished but elderly scientist states that something is possible, he is almost certainly right. When he states that something is impossible, he is very probably wrong. This is the first prediction he made. Now, what was the second? The only way of discovering the limits of the possible is to venture a little way past them into the impossible. It would be fantastic if Pandit R.C. Sharma visit Tashkent. Okay, Elena, sure. Definitely, God willing. And if opportunity comes, I'll be happy to visit Tashkent. Thank you so much. And then the other prediction, Clark said that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So this is the part that magic, the technologies, the advanced technologies, they create a sort of a magic. And you see the advanced technologies like Google Glass, uh, and there are so many things, 3D printings, they are changing. In fact, certain things, when we introduce them to the educational scene first. They are uh, used in such a way that the students and they form in the form of certain disruptive technologies. There are various form of revolutions, how the things from the simple pen and paper and up to the cloud computing, online things, how the disruptive technologies they have changed our educational world. It's really wonderful to note that. You just see the disruptive innovation, and a disruptive means here that sometimes in a short time scale a certain technology brings out such changes either in the technology itself or the result of that. Like you still remember that nowadays, perhaps in fact, I think 3 or 4 years ago, I still had the original Microsoft Windows 4. Yes, Windows 4, the software packet with me, which I gave it to my son and daughter to be donated it to their school so that the school can keep it in their museum library, and where the students they can see that once upon a time the people they used to have those, sorry, it was those 4. So like that, this is the floppy disk. It went out, and what came in? The USB drive, the pager form, and now we have smartphones. And I don't think you can see for yourself that when it was the last time you wrote a letter personally to someone, to your dear friend. Most of the time nowadays we just shoot an email, and the communication. Uh, that's uh, so there. So these are the disruptive innovations into. Now these things they are bringing certain trends in the e-learning settings. Now, how it is that it is enabling the learners to move in a variety of different and possibly unrelated fields over the course of their lifetime. And enough to debate on what Babar brought to yes. No, many. I think every civilization which came into India, they have brought extremely wonderful examples of their culture. We have so many things like the one of the wonders of the world, Taj Mahal, and there are many other things which we see, and then you can find that it has been a confluence of many civilizations, many societies. They all have contributed, and that's why the India it has become, you call it as Bharat. uh, it's become such a wonderful place where different societies, different peoples, they and in the older times when India was the seat of knowledge, and in Takshashila, which is in the eastern part of India, and Mohenjo-daro, which is towards the Pakistan side, the international scholars from Europe, from China, they visited India and studied Indian scriptures, went back with the knowledge to their own countries. Another trend is happening that informal learning is a significant aspect, and uh, the sort of communities of practice than the personal learning networks, PLN, or personal learning environments, they are on the rise, and learning has become a continuous process nowadays. As I will discuss in my next slides, you see the example of now these open courses which are being offered by many universities, and many people. If you see the distribution of their age groups, you can see that from younger to the senior groups, everyone is getting involved. So the learning is a continuous process. We all wish to keep our learning active, and technology is altering our brains. The tools which we use to define the way we are using the technology, it is definitely bringing a change in learning, and not only in the individuals as well as in the organization also. And there are various learning theories, how they are bringing like connectivitism, constructivism, pragmatism, etc. So they know how and know what. And I still remember KWAH, the table, as Dr. Nelly uses it in some of our courses, that how, why, when, and what. So an understanding of that is of utmost importance for learning. uh, how this sharing and learning is being affected. Particularly, you see the MOOC, and even currently this session is a part of Moodle MOOC 2, and it has become so popular and so successful that we see a registration of large number of people, and the experts and the scholars in their fields, they join us and they share their knowledge with us, and we all feel benefited. The MOOCs, they are one of the platforms, one of the examples, but there are various platforms in which we are sharing our knowledge, and the people, they allow others to acquire those skills, which they, with the help of someone, they can upgrade their skills. This is another good example, and I will give the credit for it to Dr. Wayne McIntosh. I think there are many mistakes in my presentation. I'm sorry that the name spelling of Wayne is wrong. So maybe I will correct it later on. He has told us about it, that in the open educational resources, although the term was coined by UNESCO as we considered it in 2001, but it's a very good example that, yes, thank you, Nelly. I think I did my presentation and I did not, proofread it, so it's my mistake. They say that the scholars in the older times also, they used to visit the libraries where these documents, they were kept, and then the people, they used to borrow them, to read them, to copy them, and then return them. It's a sort of open educational resources, and to the thinkers, it's flocked like that. And then it's another example, which is this Northwest University in Africa. They have very recently joined Open Educational Resource University, and I found this example where these Timbuktu families, they used to preserve their own traditions and knowledge on the scrolls, and they have a wonderful, these families, certain families, there you can see the a person, his handwriting, something, creating a document. Maybe it looks like here it is a case of creating another copy of that, because those old manuscripts, they are very fragile, and to keep them safe there, it is. So uh, this Open Educational Resource University is a wonderful example of sharing the knowledge. And through Wiki Educator, like Dr. Nelly, a member, along with many of us, we provide learning for content development workshops there. These are the free 10 days online workshops, in addition to face-to-face workshops also, in which the facilitators, they contribute by devoting their time and helping others to develop certain skills in them. And I would like to thank many people, because I have also learned the same way. And due to this same thing, I think the sense of altruism, that whenever possible, we try to give it back to the society. That's why, because the way, at certain point of time, I also learned many things from others by participating in certain workshops, and particularly collaborating with Dr. Nelly with her platform IT for All. and joining hands with many colleagues there for Moodle training, uh, for training on mm, we call e-portfolio and many others. So I strongly believe that one of the ways of learning, enhancing learning, is to share what we know, so that because as I started in my presentation, it's the only thing which we share. It doesn't get reduced. The more we share, the more we increase the knowledge. Thank you, Helena. Yes, I'm also learning from all of you. So I think this is the end of my presentation. Yes. So
Thank,
uh,
thank you,
thank you
Dr.
so much for listening. And now the session is uh,
The
over.
session has just begun.
Back to you,
I
Lali.
always say that it never ends, Dr. Ramesh. This is the beginning. It's
Yes.
only
Yeah.
the beginning of our collaboration. You know, if we've collaborated up to a point now, well, it's going to be even more intensive in the future from tomorrow, okay, or from the next minute.
Yes.
So, what are we planning? What's next? That's a big question for everyone, and including Dr. Ramesh. What is next?
I think one of the things which I sometimes feel is that the a sort of developing knowledge which is about information reliability, in which how we can be sure that how to ensure information is trustworthy, and how to validate findings. Perhaps, in fact, it has one of the hunch by establishing the credibility of including Wikipedia, in the way that sometimes the people, they were hesitating to cite them as a certain sort of a research reference. So to me, that is one thing. And then the another thing is that the literacy in the new media forms, including the text, audio, video, virtual words, and understanding of how to create value with these forms. That needs to be one of the next things. And then, since we are heavily using nowadays social networks for most of the things, including office communications, teaching, learning, professional development, even business houses, anyone, you can see the example. So, how we can see that the uses and the drawbacks of the social networks and the communication technologies, and how we can build strongly on those platforms, and then the ability to contact and leverage the expertise of these specializing in the niche areas, in which uh, the people, when they come out with certain information, and then to develop it into a certain sort of lifelong personal learning networks, building upon a wide range of social and information based connections. And perhaps this is what our platform IT for All is doing, which I strongly believe that, like here on Moodle MOOC2 through VisIQ, we have been successfully able to build a personal learning network uh, among ourselves, and this tribe is ever increasing, and I feel very happy about it. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ramesh. Notice that Helena is trying to be provocative because I know that this is not how she feels, but it's a good question that many educators are asking. And the question is, um, Helena, I just lost it.
Uh,
Do you see it? Why should we share our projects for free? She does, but it's just a question. How would you respond?
Actually, there are some issues into it, that why one should share their material free of cost with others. you know, I think there is a sense of altruism into it. It can be a reputation of an individual or an institution by like they see you take the example of MIT, and in fact I remember one of the examples cited by Professor Rory McGill, who is the OER chair for UNESCO and Commonwealth of Learning and a professor at Athabasca University. He once told me that, means he was speaking at some platform, and he told that when the Athabasca University Press, they decided to go open access, and there was a hunch that if you are providing open access to your material, what will happen to the sales? Interestingly, they found that when the books they were made available through open access to the community, the sales of their printed books it increased. So that was quite interesting. And then sometimes it's a short of that. If I want to take something, I give something. So that can be another reason. Helena is asking Sachi Vikrabati from Delhi University. Helena, maybe because in Delhi itself we have some central universities which has under Ministry of Education, like IGNOU is a central university, and Delhi University is another university, and Jawaharlal Nehru is another university. So perhaps I'm not sure if I have met her.
Okay, any other questions or comments
I think
that you'd
my
like?
chat messages have gone up, so let me see. Yasmin, uh,
Writes in French.
yeah, connais.
She knows
Oh, it is French.
United
I
States.
thought that it is Spanish.
No, it's French. Je connais means
I
I
can't.
know.
Right.
It's
I may have to call my daughter to read it if it is French. She knows French.
all right. So if there aren't any questions about relating to the presentation, we're going to continue this session in the next book, I guess. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in February at the next Moodle MOOC, and it is next year because it's February 2014. You're right. And we're going to
Yes.
have these 3 times a year, which is really exciting. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. And Dr. Ramesh, it must be really late there in India. I guess it must be about
11.
11
Yeah,
o'clock
it
at
is
night.
11
So
in
I
the
think
night.
it's time to go to bed. All right. And the noise is
No, no, it
quiet
is okay.
because it's,
Nelly, sometimes the sessions have been so interesting, particularly if you remember when I was in Goa and there were some sessions which was around somewhere around midnight. Even I used to make it point that, okay, let me participate because I can forego my sleep. That's not that important, but if I can get some new knowledge, some better information, so losing some sleep, it's okay. So
thank you. I'd
that's more
like
important.
I'd like to remind everybody, you brought back what Stephen said, and it's what we all think. It's not about the content, it's about the connections that we make during these live sessions and in these online environments. And the MOOCs, it's about the connections. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming, connecting, and we'll see you tomorrow at my session on Moodle as a course and learning management system. Should be quite exciting. Thank you so much. Bye for now. This was recorded,
Yeah,
and you can copy and take the chat with you, paste it anywhere you wish. You're also invited to go to the courseware on WizIQ and get all the information, including the YouTube video that's going to be shared in a couple of hours. So thank you. Thank you so much.
and I also thank everyone for their kind presence and patience listening. Thank you so much. Bye bye.